am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Robert Wagner of the Little Wretches. Let's get started.
Um, when did you begin to do music as far as professionally? When did you start and what did you do to start?
Well, professionally, I guess the real definition of professional is that you get paid for it. So I guess my first gig that I made, $5 from or something. My friend and I, my roommate in college and I started a band called No Shelter. The punk rock scene had just emerged in Western Pennsylvania, and we had some acquaintances who had bands that were playing. There was a club called Phase 3, which has since burned down, but that was a place where the punk bands could play. And somebody offered us a gig there. So we played as No Shelter. Oh, what would that have been? 1979 or 1980. And what motivated us, I'd never wanted to do anything other than play in a band, but I just didn't think it was feasible. I didn't think it was good. I was good enough. And, I knew I could write songs, but then my roommate turned out to be a very talented musician. And then I had the misfortune of coming down with a rare form of cancer that would have been terminal had I got it a couple of years earlier, but they had just discovered a new treatment for it. But, chemotherapy is miserable. You lose your hair and you throw up, and it's like having the flu for a long time. So the night before the Super Bowl that year, my roommate and I looked at each other and just said, let's start a band. And I stuck with it.
So did you ever plan for something else? If because you said you didn't think it was feasible. Did you ever plan to do anything else, work anywhere else prior to deciding to do this?
No, I never planned on having a job. I never planned on having a house. I never planned on having a car. I've lived pretty much moment to moment, day to day. At that point in my life, I was pretty much estranged from my family and hated everyone and everything, and wanted to change the world, because what needs to be changed? Everything. So, for me going to college, which was a blessing that was afforded to me, but it was just a matter of treading water till I could figure out. At that point, I didn't even have any role models outside of people, songwriters and rock and roll musicians. Those are the only people that I looked up to. Everybody else, I'd look at them and say, "Oh, I would never trade places with you. I would never want to live like that." So, I got an education. I have a master's degree in instruction and learning, and they give you money to hang out with kids and they call it teaching. But this myth that teachers are heroes, come on, really? So I never planned on anything other. I've had a lot of side jobs from time to time. That there've been weeks of my life where I lived on $5 a week. There were stretches of my life where people gave me cars and gave me food and kept me afloat. But this is all I ever wanted to do, and I'm doing it. If you give yourself something to fall back on, you will probably fall back on it. So, it's the curse of the working class. If you're a wealthy person, and your parents will get you ballet lessons or dance lessons or ice skating lessons and soccer lessons and, baseball coaching, you can afford to take a risk. But when you're from the working class, all you ever hear is, don't waste your life. Don't fool yourself. You're never going to make it. Give yourself something to fall back on. But because I'd already lost everything, my family had disintegrated and I had nothing and nobody, I just figured there's nothing to fall back on, nothing but going forward, full speed ahead. Look out, here we come.
So you said you started out singing, doing a gig. When did you get to the point of realizing you were going to start producing and recording and things of that nature? And how did you start that process?
Well, that was part of the whole punk rock DIY indie movement. You made records. I think the first in like the lineage of what I do. There was a group in New York City called Television, and I think there was a guy who was, like ran maybe a film program. I think his name was Terry Ork, and he had an independent label and he would release self-produced recordings by bands in New York City. I think Television may have been the first, and then there was a famous 7-inch vinyl 45 released by Patti Smith that kind of shook things up. Over in England, I think the first band to start their own label might have been a band called Buzzcocks. But it's just part of what we do. At that era, the entertainment business, we used to call them dinosaurs. They'd grown so big that they were doomed to extinction, and there was no room for people like us. So punk rock came up around the same time hip hop did. Hip hop started as, parties in parking lots with speakers and DJs and dancers, just kind of spontaneous parties. And punk rock was just kind of the same thing. Kids that couldn't afford to go see rock stars in arenas, putting together their own bands and doing their own thing. And then the learning involved with it, finding a record plant, a pressing plant that will press your record, finding the studio to record it in, figuring out how to print the sleeves. We just happened to, the keyboard player for our band, a guy named Dale Nelson, rest in peace, he worked at something called Chuco Brothers Sound and Light, along with our drummer, Sean McDonald. And they worked with this brilliant guy named Tom Barnes. Sean McDonald's parents had a house that was for sale. I think maybe one of his grandparents had passed away and they'd lived there. So we used the house as our recording studio. They put the mixing board up on the second floor, ran the cables down to the first floor. We set the band up, bass in one corner, piano in another corner, drums in a room by themselves. And they had access to excellent microphones, and they were geniuses. So they Tom Barnes and Dale Nelson really recorded our first record, which is considered kind of the best of the genre for our region. It's a song called Brooks Robinson's Camp, a great piece of music if anybody would look it up. It's on an album of ours, of the Little Wretches, called The Slow Restless Agony. So that it's just part of what we do. If you wait for somebody to give you money or invest in you, you might wait forever. We work off of inspiration, and we reinvest in ourselves. All the money that we made at performances, we put back into our recording projects, and we've pretty much always done that with the Little Wretches. We pay our expenses and we reinvest in the project.
I like how you mentioned that. It kind of is a testament of not waiting until something is popular, because when you say back in, that was what, the 70s or 80s, they turned the house into a music studio, which I'm sure back then was considered crazy. Nowadays, just about every producer has a music studio in their home. And so now it's the thing to do. The thing is, it's like, you don't wait until it's the thing to do. You do what you have to do, to get your, chase after your passion. And so I'm glad you guys didn't wait. You saw an opportunity and you took it.
Yeah, Casey. Somebody recently, I was invited to be on a podcast to discuss whether there's been a decline in creativity among the younger generation. And the old saying with creativity is, the necessity is the mother of invention. And if all your needs are provided for you, you have no reason to be creative. But for us, it was just, we have to do this. We have to solve the problem. We have to figure out a way to do it. And I'm a little bit of a religious person. Seek and ye shall find. I believe God gives you what you need when you need it. And at least we've been blessed live, follow his path, and your needs will be provided for.
Yes, I believe that. And I do agree, as far as this generation not being as creative. I think even in my generation, college wasn't still everything. Nowadays, that's all they're told is you don't need to do anything. You just go to college and let everyone do everything for you. And so that no one's being creative because they're just expecting to go to college and let everything be done for you. And I do believe that we should be creating something new every day and not depending. I mean, college is nice. It's just, I don't believe it's something we should be so dependent on anymore, because you can't, how can you create new if you're only learning what's already been done? So,
well, if I can add to what you just said, I mean, I think another thing that goes along with that is just from a creative standpoint, the human species needs to recreate itself. So, you have, and that begins with families, husbands and wives having children. The most creative and important creative work that a person will ever do, if they're blessed to have a family, is raise their children. And I think somewhere along the line in our culture, this idea that taking care of your children is lesser. You need to be in the rat race, climbing the ladder of success in your profession. And that's the biggest lie of all. Your real work is teaching your children how to provide for themselves, how to love each other, how to survive in the world. And for me, as a believer, the most important thing you can do is teach your children how to walk the path. But that's, our culture is completely turned on that. Even in the school system now, they want everybody to be prepared for a career, but they don't prepare you to take care of your children, which is not number one priority.
yeah, it's very much so. I definitely agree with that. So, I'm pretty sure, I think you've been on the show, 2 years ago, you were here on the show and we were talking about you dealing with the pandemic, and as a musician having many limitations, and things have lightened up. Well, they've gone back and forth, back and forth. I think now they're a little bit lighter. Has anything changed? Have you been able to go back to in-person concerts? Are you planning on doing so, or are you?
Yeah. Well, finally, I mean, things started a few months ago, really, but people were really hesitant. And then some places opened and then they closed again, or they opened, but there were restrictions. They were expecting people to show proof of vaccination and that type of thing, which, I don't particularly approve of. I'm flattered that anybody's going to come and see me perform. I'm definitely not going to make any, if I don't feel safe enough to go out and perform, then I'm not going to go out and do it. If you don't feel safe enough to brave it, then stay home. But this asking for vaccination cards, now all that's passed. Now the hurdle that we're up against now is a lot of venues that canceled their concert series from a couple of years ago. Their number one priority is to honor the commitment they made so they're trying to rebook the shows that they canceled. So, that puts me on a 2-year waiting list, and I don't feel like waiting 2 years. But, we're in a very good position, because in that span of time, we had an album called Undesirables and Anarchists, which was very successful. I did a concert album, just me and a violin player, called Songs from the Land of Pit Bulls and Poker Machines. That spawned a iTunes #1 hit on the folk rock charts. And we just, on Friday, our new album, Red Beets and Horseradish, came out. So I'm in very good position now to take advantage of opportunities that open up. I used COVID to my advantage. Now let's see, so we're just waiting to shoot out of the gate.
What advice would you give musicians? Because the talent part is not is somewhat easy. Learning how to read music, the proper way to hold the guitar, and things of that nature. One of the things they don't teach enough in college is the business side and even the money side. Like, it's one thing if you're a solo act. Well, not even that, because I'm sure most solo acts, unless you're playing with a track, they have musicians and they have backup singers. So how do you even decide how much the theater is going to pay you so that everyone gets paid and no one's getting, stuck with not enough money? And how do you decide what kind of contract you're going to draw up? And how do you decide, copyrights and publishing? And so what are some of the things you've learned about the business side and the money side of music that you realize are just most people go in the music business not even knowing that stuff exists?
Well, I definitely had no idea that that stuff exists. I just, I came up with this myth of meritocracy, that if we did good work, people would discover it. That there are people in the field of journalism, people in the field of the music business whose job is to discover good work. And I never gave any thought to branding, which is now something that people put a lot of thought into. And the first question that we were always asked when we were approaching venues to let us play, there's like, what kind of music do you play? Like, well, we play rock and roll music, kind of folk rock music. But they want to know, what do you sound like? What do you look like? What kind of cigarettes is your audience supposed to smoke? What kind of blue jeans is your audience supposed to wear? What kind of hairstyle? It's all about lifestyle. And in fact, there was a guy named Tony that owned a very great showcase club in Pittsburgh called Graffiti. And he was like, the Pope up there. At the end of the night, he'd call you up into his office and, discuss philosophy and history of the world with you. And he would always ask, what lifestyle are you promoting? Like, hey, we're promoting the lifestyle of freedom and goodness, we love, freedom, and beauty. But, that doesn't translate necessarily into merchandise. Now that's changed a little bit, but we couldn't answer that question. In fact, at one point in our career, we'd put out a very successful independent album called Beyond the Stormy Blast. And we met with a music business attorney in New York City. And he pointed out to us that the first 3 songs on the album sounded like 3 different bands. He said he could get either of those 3 bands signed, but we had to decide which band we were. And, we were stunned. We thought we were ready to go, but they from a merchandising standpoint, they have to know what shelf to put you on, what label to put you under. Are you go in dairy, or do you go in chips and soda? So that was hard. That was hard for us to figure out. And so I previously had given no thought to it. And now I think, I have pretty good answers for that. We play folk rock. I'm a songwriter. I tell stories. I'm a teacher. I teach through stories. I tell stories through songs. And so a little tagline I use sometimes is cinematography of the soul, musical portraits and cinematography. If that doesn't sound too preposterous. But, I'm a storyteller. I'm a picture painter. I paint pictures with words, and I paint pictures of characters. I'm kind of like the old school folk artist who's telling the story of his people. But that, nobody prepared me for that from the more. And, I'm from a working class family. I didn't have entrepreneurial skills. I was uncomfortable around wheelers and dealers. I didn't understand. You have to have something that they want. When you go to a music conference, you're not going to a music conference, you're going to a sales conference, and people are buying, selling, and trading, music. People are in the money business, and they make money through music. And, that was a foreign concept to me, and it still is in some ways. I'm the artist. I make the music. I understand that I have to deal with the business, and I've learned how to deal with it a little bit. But from my angle of things, the pay, it's you put butts in seats, you sell tickets, you pay the expenses of the sound man, the lights, the dressing room, and all of that. And once you clear the expenses, it's 100% profit. Same thing with recording. When you produce a recording, you're paying the studio time, you're paying the engineer, you got to pay all those expenses. But once those expenses are recouped, it's 100% profit. So that in my line of work, it's pretty easy. You sell tickets, you sell merchandise, you make money. Whereas if you were a wedding band or a polka band or something, then you'd have to decide: do we need each guy in the band to make $200 a night, or do we need each guy in the band to make $500 a night? Where do we rank in the marketplace? Are we the number one polka band in Pennsylvania, or are we just in the middle of the pack? But ultimately people have to want to pay to hear what you do, either through buying your music, streaming your music, or buying a ticket to your show. And that's really easy, man. You gotta have something worth it. A lot of songwriters. I went to a songwriter show just last week where it was very poorly attended, and I think each songwriter maybe got an envelope with a $50 bill or something, and for them that was probably a good night, because I'm sure at the door they didn't make that much money. They didn't sell that many tickets, but the venue, they charged $5 to get in and $14 for a glass of wine in a plastic cup. Like, man, that's backwards. It should have been $14 to get in and $5 for a glass of wine in a plastic cup. And then the musical artists on the low level, they're so used to being background music. People are really coming out to socialize and to drink. It's like, no, man, treat yourself like a theater performer. When somebody walks into the theater and sits down, or goes to the symphony and sits down, they dare not whisper, because people paid good money to see it and they don't want to be interrupted. Would you go to a movie and show up late and leave early? No, you want to be there when the movie starts, and you're going to stay at least till the credits, but songwriters, they got no self-respect, and many of them don't have anything to say worth staying for. I think that's one thing that we bring to the table, is we have stories worth listening to. We have something to say. We're not just background music. And in fact, as background music, we're pretty average. When you tune into us, then you see what we really have to offer.
Well, speaking about that, you mentioned that you recently released an album. What is the name of the album, and can you share with us at least 2 songs on there, and the inspiration behind it?
Oh my! Well, thank you for asking, Casey. I've been working on this for a long time. I tried to record it about 10 years ago, but something was missing. And then over the course of time, I added about 3 songs to the repertoire. The concept is called red beets and horseradish, which is something you eat. A lot of people from Eastern Europe, they'll have, like minced beets with horseradish mixed in around, they'll serve it for Easter or Passover, like the holiday season. And, usually, you have it on a cracker or have it with hard-boiled eggs or something. And I used to always have it around Easter when I was growing up, and my grandparents had passed away. I didn't have a recipe, so I looked it up on the internet because I just had a hankering for red beets and horseradish, and I discovered that all the ingredients are symbolic, and it varies from ethnicity to ethnicity. For the Serbians, for Serbs, the red of the beets is symbolic of the blood of their people, and the horseradish is symbolic of the bitterness of their suffering. For many other ethnicities, it's more of a Christian symbol of the blood of our Savior and the bitterness of his suffering. For people of Jewish heritage, they don't consume blood at all. So the red is just there for flavoring from the beets, but the horseradish is reminiscent of the bitterness of their suffering and bondage. So for me, this is a collection of songs that just kind of belong together. Songs about sick people, old people, crazy people, people who are alone. So there's a lot of character portraits, but it's not really about their suffering. The suffering is there, but it's about the indomitable spirit that sustains them, the humor that sustains them, that refusal to quit, that refusal to be held down. So the one song, the first single, which just came out on Friday, there's a great lyric video. The song's called Palms and Crosses, and it's kind of set on Holy Saturday, the Saturday between the crucifixion and the resurrection. And each verse is kind of like a little vignette. First verse starts at the foot of the cross. You know, our Savior has died. We didn't see this coming. Oh no, we've devoted our lives and it's all changed. And then the refrain of the song is, tomorrow will decide what yesterday means. So on the Saturday after the crucifixion, little did they know the next morning they were going to go to the tomb and the stone would be rolled away and nothing but a heap of robes laying there and an angel waiting to give them the good news. And then from there it goes to people in other circumstances, you know, women who lose their husbands and so on, that you know, when you lose everyone and everything, what keeps you going on is your faith. And that idea that that today's tragedy can be turned into something positive, and you'll make it positive by how you apply the lesson you learned tomorrow. So tomorrow will decide what yesterday brings. That's Palms and Crosses. It's also a pretty high energy and catchy song. Another song that's on there that's probably going to be the second single is called Loving Kindness. And loving kindness is a term, I don't know, I heard some preacher somewhere talking about in the Psalms, in you know, Hebrew literature, there are words that can't be translated really to English. It's not like loving kindness is not love and kindness. It's one idea that can best be expressed by the compound word loving kindness. And you know, the refrain of the song is pretty much loving kindness all my days. And you know, I'm you know, without it's not really a preachy type of song, but it's saying, you know, I believe in the impossible. From the point of view of the world, what I believe in is impossible. Yes, I believe that spirit is real. From a materialistic point of view, I'm crazy. But that's what I believe. I believe in the impossible, that oceans can be parted and the hearts of haters moved. I don't speak for anybody else, but I know that I don't deserve the blessings I've received. I've done whatever I have, and it's been given to me. You know, you'll hear people talk about social justice. Beware what you ask for. You don't want justice, my friend. You want mercy, because if you got what you deserved, you would regret having asked for it. What you want is mercy. So that's what loving kindness is all about. You know, it's a catchy song, and it's one of those things where, you know, you wake up in the morning and you want to say thank you to someone. You know, thank you to who? Thank you to God who put me here and gave me all this wonderful stuff. You know, gave me air to breathe, food to eat, and purposeful things to do. Yeah, I didn't always feel like that. I've had some pretty low points in my life. So it's all kind of come around to have meaning. You know, if you'd asked me when I was 18 years old, I'd have been a very angry person. I would not have been able to write a song like Loving Kindness.
Well, I'm definitely happy that you are in a different position that you were able to do that. And the first song you mentioned is definitely around this is that time of Palms and Crosses, definitely not far from it. So last question I have for you is, I mean, you are independent, so you probably don't go through as many hardships in the music business as those who are on a contract. Though, is there anything in the music business you notice that needs to change, and you hope it will change for the better, if not now, for the next generation?
You know, I don't know. You know, technology has leveled the playing field. You know, it allows the average person without any formal training to get in the game. But then again, you know, we're like Walt Whitman's proverbial leaves of grass. There's millions of us, and we're just one blade of grass. You know, how are we ever going to be noticed? But that's where, you know, that understanding of your purpose really comes in. If you're in this for fame and recognition and for money, you know, good luck. I hope you get it. But in the big scheme of things, when you're gone, none of that will have mattered. In many ways, you know, we're all part of the folk culture, and hopefully we're steering it in, you know, the Martin Luther King quote, which I don't think was original to him. I think he got it from a preacher from another generation, but he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. You know, we might not be around to see the fruits of our labors, but we're bending the universe towards justice. And we're, you know, we're part of that moral arc. Goodness exists. There is good, there is evil. I hope I'm on the side of good, you know, fight the good fight.
Ready up a styrofoam dish, roll your ball, ride your bike, there you go, just play nice. Look, ma, look, you got a bite, he stole your bait, story of my life. 1 week palms, next week crosses, mostly life goes on unseen. All I can say is tomorrow will decide what yesterday means. A mother with her children on the 4th of July, waving sparklers on a cordoned off street. I told you keep your shoes on, don't blame me when you wind up with glass in your feet.
That is all the time we have for you today on Musical Interlude. I'd like to thank our guest, Robert Wagner, for stopping on by, and of course you, the audience, for watching. Thank you. Have a great day.